I'm sharing my. Are you able to see the screen? Hello.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay. So we are going to talk about the scientific writing, a beginner's guide. As I introduced that this lecture would be for the beginners initially, but if you learn it by heart, if you try to inculcate its culture, eventually and ultimately you can become a perfect scientific writer. Initially, before I start, I would like to give a kind of disclaimer that, see, this is the age of the artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence has changed the word actually. It changed the word of science also, changed the word of scientific writing also. So there are a lot of possibilities, lot of open access. The softwares are available which are helping you to write a scientific article, to write a research article, to write the synopsis, and to write anything which you want. But I wish to warn to the people who are really willing to do a kind of serious research or willing to do a kind of serious research paper, they should not rely upon the artificial intelligence completely, because it is sometime it can be fallacious also, sometime it can be misleading, and sometime it may not be conveying which you are willing to convey. So rely upon your own skills, rely upon your own wisdom, and you can take the help of the AI only just to improve the quality of the writing. If you feel that there are some kind of things which are to be refined, you can definitely take the help of the AI, but do not rely upon the AI. And this is a warning for the newcomers, or the warning for the new students who are willing to make their careers in the scientific research and scientific writing. So with this, I wish to remind you the good old days when you have started writing. Actually, when you had been very young, you might be remembering that how you have started learning to write. I mean, you have started writing over the paper. So you might be remembering that it was somebody who might have told you how to write. It is not at your own that you have started writing at your own, but somebody elder in the family, somebody in the school, somebody might have given you kind of tips how to start writing. So we are going to do the same kind of thing again today, but in a different context. We are going to repeat the same kind of thing in a different context, and this context, today's context, is the scientific writing. Again, there is somebody who is going to teach you how to write, because you are a beginner and you might not be knowing how to actually write a scientific article. So while beginning the scientific writing, the question which a beginner should have in the mind is, I mean, these are the essential questions, and unless or until you have the answers for these questions, you should not begin writing actually. So before you start writing, there should be, I mean, you should ask yourself that what is scientific writing, what is it, and how it is different from the conventional writing, why do we need it, who can write it, and how can we learn writing it. So these are the questions, and we are going to find the answers for these all questions in coming few slides. So what is scientific writing? Scientific writing, if you want to define it, it's a piece of writing which is basically based upon the established observations of the facts. This is something very important, important consideration or important criteria which defines the scientific writing. When we say that it is based upon established observation and facts, this simply says that these are the observations which are either made by the others in the past, or the facts which have been established by others in the past, or these are the observations which are made by the author itself through a process of scientifically driven experimentation. You might have done some kind of clinical trial or some kind of experiment, and the observations which you have made, these are going to make a kind of piece of writing, and this would be the scientific writing, because it is based on the established observations and fact which are either verified by you or verified by others. The second most important component of scientific writing is that it has to be verifiable. Whatever you are writing there, every point, every fact, every statement, every data, whichever you are putting there in the scientific writing, should be verifiable. If you said that, say that in Nepal there are these many Sovarikpa colleges or these many students which have been passed out from the Sovarikpa colleges, or these are the graduates, or this number is the practitioner, that data should be verifiable. It is not a kind of presumption. It is not a kind of assumption that I believe that this should be the data. No, it should be cross-checkable, and the data should reflect the original references, so that if somebody wants to check the original reference, they can go through and they can find that this is the original data. So it should not be based upon the personal opinion, upon the experience or assumptions. It should be verifiable and it should be realistic data. Moreover, it should be logical. The another consideration of scientific writing is logical. Logical means the interpretation and inferences are logically driven from the real observations. When you are doing a kind of clinical trial, the result should be driven from the observations which are being made. It is not, a result should not be that what I feel like. It should directly be related to the observations which you have made through the clinical trial. So it should be based upon the real observation and data, and should have an accepted method of writing. We will be talking about this later. It should have a kind of introduction or material and method, results and discussion. So it should have a kind of accepted method of writing. And finally, this writing should be purposive. I mean, the moment you start writing, it should have a kind of clear object that what for you are writing. So the purpose is not the entertainment or not the information sharing, but is to create an impact or to bring a change by adding new knowledge into the existing pool of knowledge. So this is something very peculiar to the scientific writing, which makes it different from the conventional writing. What is conventional writing? Conventional writing means literature, some personal notes, some layman writing, some magazine or newspaper articles. So you clearly see that these factors which we have understood about the scientific writing are completely missing in the conventional writing. And conventional writings may be personalized, opinion-based, experience-based, or observational reporting simply without any inference. So the key differences of the two writings are very clear. One is the verifiability, as we already have talked about, that whatever you are writing in the scientific article, all that should be verifiable by cross-checking of cited references, by repetition of the similar experimentation. This is also something important. I mean, whenever we are writing a kind of scientific article, we detail about materials and methods which have been utilized in doing that experiment. So by detailing the materials and method, we understand that if someone at any other place tries to repeat the same kind of experimentation by utilizing the same material and method, they should also be reaching to the same results. This is the purpose. And this is another method of verifying the results which have been obtained by one research. And by cross-checking the raw data also. I mean, you need to make your raw data available. So whenever it is needed, it can be cross-checked. It should be purposive, not for the information sharing, but it is goal-oriented. The scientific writing is goal-oriented. It should be compact. This is also something very important, because if you want to publish your research there in somewhere in a quality journal, the journals are always having short of a space. I mean, they are always running short of a space. So they want to say you more in less of the words. So it is not about the storytelling. No redundancy is required. So you need to learn the art of writing in a compact manner so that more can be said in less words. So this is also something specific to the scientific writing. And we need to follow a kind of a standard pattern. As I talked about that, we need to follow kind of emerald pattern. So what do we need to do? Okay, what is science? I mean, if you try to explain this, what science is a kind of systematic enterprise that builds and organizes knowledge in the form of testable explanation and predictions about phenomenon. An ultimate objective of science is to use this knowledge. This is something very important. What for the science is making the experiment? It is for the use of this knowledge for bettering the world through application of testable knowledge. So whatever experiment we are doing, whatever clinical trials we are doing, we are publishing it, and the purpose is what? Purpose is to improve the quality of the practice or improve the quality of the life of the people who are belonging to our society. So unless or until this objective is fulfilled, it would not be science. So science should always be thinking of making a kind of better society. And why do we need scientific writing? We need scientific writing so that whatever we have learned, that could be converted kind of record which can be retrieved in future also. If somebody wants to see that what has happened earlier, what kind of researches have been done earlier, unless or until you make it documented, how can somebody else in the future generation can learn about that? So this is why the scientific writing is required. Scientific writing is needed. And moreover, scientific writing is also required to ensure the progress by checking the previous achievements. I mean, whatever has been done earlier, if we have a kind of record of that, we would be moving further, or we would be moving forward, and we may not be requiring to repeat the same kind of experimentations which have been done earlier by other people. So this is why record keeping or the writing or the documentation is required. So since quite a long time, this was recognized that writing is essential to make a kind of progress, even in the time of Newton, and even in the time of Robert Hooke also, it was well recognized that writing is very much essential if we want to make a kind of progress. So, I mean, let us think of that. We are studying the medicine. Maybe I am studying the Ayurveda. You are studying the Soma Rigpa. So what are the resources of studies in these kind of medicine? What are your resources through which you study the medicine? So we believe that what we have is ancient manuscripts, some old manuscripts we might be having, as in Ayurveda we have. In Soma Rigpa also you have a lot of ancient manuscripts. We have published researches, we have published books, we have grey literature like handwritten notes of observation on patients, we have blogs and websites. All these things, what we are talking about, all these comprises scientific writing as it is written in a highly organized manner with a definitive objective. Let us see the example of scientific writing in traditional medicine from the past. For example, in Ayurveda, the Charak Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, and other ancient treatises. And in Tibetan medicine also, I have learned about 4 treatises of Tibetan medicine comprising of root treatise, explanatory treatise of oral instruction, and the last treatise, which belong to 8th and 12th centuries. And besides this, number of other ancient manuscripts or textbooks are available. So these are the examples of the ancient texts which are available. And just think of that, if these manuscripts have not been available with us, how would they have been learning these ancient sciences? If Charak Samhita or Sushruta Samhita have not been available with us now, how would have been learning? We would have been learning the Ayurveda today. Or if you may not be having these old treatises which are belonging to the Tibetan medicine or Soma Rigpa, how you would be learning the Tibetan medicine? So just think of that there had been people in the ancient time who thought of documenting what knowledge they had so that this can be utilized by the future generation. So this is the beauty of the scientific writing, and the scientific writing has been a kind of nature or has been a kind of the specialty of the traditional medicine since quite long time, since long past. So the pattern of, I'm just giving you the example how the ancient Ayurveda texts are actually written. They follow a very specific pattern of writing as we talk of the scientific writing today, like introduction and material method and results and discussion. The Ayurvedic manuscripts also, like Sushruta Samhita and Charak Samhita, have also followed the similar kind of pattern. A very specific pattern of writing has been followed in Ayurvedic texts. So this was what? An orderly division of the sections, we call them sthan, an orderly arrangement of chapters, we call them adhyay in every section. Each chapter comprising of an introduction setting the point that why this discussion is important, why this chapter is actually introduced, and why this discussion is important. And most beautiful thing is this, that every chapter is run in a kind of question answer format to make it reader friendly. I mean, there are certain questions which have been asked by the Agnivesh in Charak Samhita, And these have been answered by the Guru, by the Atreya Punarvasu. And this whole treatise, whole chapter and whole sthan is formatted in the same way, so that we can understand that why this particular aspect of this chapter is important. It is being asked in the form of a question by the Agnivesh, and it was replied by his Guru. And finally, in every chapter, a precise summary at the end is available, so that you can understand what has been told in this particular chapter. So just imagine that how scientifically every chapter in these ancient treatises, 5,000 years ago, this Charak Samhita and Sushruta Samhita have been written, and these kind of scientific formats have been available by that time. Moreover, if you look deeper into the organization of the Charak Samhita, I'm just giving an example of the Charak Samhita, you would be surprised at how systematically they have arranged the sthana, different sthana in, or different components of the treatise. So they begin with the Sutra Sthan, which talks about fundamentals of health and disease. Then they come to the etiopathogenesis through Nidana Sthan. Then they come to standards defining the health and disease, which lies in Vimana Sthan. Then they talk about anatomy and physiology, which is Sharira Sthan. Then they talk about prognosis of the disease, which is Indriya Sthan. Then disease management plan, which comes in the Chikitsa Sthan. Then drug formulary or pharmacy, which lies in Kalpa Sthan. And finally, they talk about essentials of success in medical practice, which is lying there in the Siddhi Sthan. So beginning from the fundamentals of health and disease, they end up at the essentials of success in medical practice. And in between, they talk about everything which is needed to become a good practitioner, everything which is needed to ensure that the person who are going to take these medicines remain healthy. So they talk about almost everything. So this is how the Charak Samhita has been organized. And you may feel surprised that how this Samhita, how beautifully this Samhita has been actually organized. Then another important thing which was followed by the ancient Ayurvedic text is that they followed a very, very high standard, the ethical aspect of the scientific writing. Unfortunately, these days, the ethics is getting diluted everywhere in the society as well as in the scientific writing also. But we get surprised at how ethically these things have been taken up by the ancient treatises or by the ancient samhitas of Ayurveda. Just a small example which is written there in Charak Samhita. If you turn the first page of the Charak Samhita, you will be finding a phrase which speaks as Agnivesh krate tantre charake prati sanskrate dradbale sampurite. That simply says that this text was initially written by Agnivesh, then Charak has endorsed it further, Charak has redundant it, and then finally some parts of this textbook was missing and which was added up by the Dradbal. So all three people who have actually contributed to this text, which is known as Charak Samhita today, are endorsed in the beginning only. So Agnivesh krate tantre charake prati sanskrate dradbale sampurite. This simply says that we need to give the credits to the expertise of others in the written documents, whosoever has done something in that particular area. So if somebody has done something earlier in the same area, in the form of the references, in the form of citations, we need to give due credit to the work which was done by others in the written document. It is the ethical aspect of the scientific writing. So what is being done today? I would simply be sharing some common unethical practices which are currently prevailing in the scientific writing. The people who are starting their careers as a scientific researcher should be aware about these things. The first thing is plagiarism. Plagiarism is copying the material verbatim from other published sources without acknowledging it. You are making a copy and paste from some other sources and you are putting it as your own. So this is nothing but the plagiarism. And these days, a lot of softwares are available which are able to identify that from which source this particular part, this particular paragraph, or this particular text has been taken. So you might not be noticing it that the people are watching it. And if you make a kind of copy and paste in your research article, it would be identified as a kind of plagiarized material and you would be disqualified for the publication of that. And even if later if it comes to be identified, you can be penalized for that also if you are utilizing the plagiarized material. Second unethical practice is the salami publishing. Salami publishing is the slicing of the information obtained through a single research, as many researchers, as many publications. It is a common practice there that we are conducting a kind of clinical trial. We have registered certain number of people, certain number of research participants there. And out of these participants, somebody has responded very nicely to the treatment, and we prefer to put it as a case report. And then after we saw that some more people have responded very nicely to the treatment, and we try to put it as a case series. And finally, we put the same data as a clinical trial. So out of the same data which was there in a clinical trial, we published 3 papers. Actually, one is the case report, another is the case series, and finally we published the clinical trial. But unfortunately, all that data was belonging to the same data pool actually. So this is also unethical. Whatever objective or whatever purpose was initially conceived while starting the research, that should be fulfilled, and there should not be any kind of slicing of the data for publishing of the different articles. Malified authorship is also one very important unethical practice these days. I mean, AI authorship is also, it is a kind of debated thing that AI should be given the authorship or not, because many people take the help of the AI chatbot or chat GPT kind of thing. Second thing is the ghost authorship. Ghost authorship belongs to the professional writers who are actually not in the author list, but they are hired people who write on behalf of you and you get it published. So these are the ghost authors. And the guest authorship is also one very prevailing condition there in Ayurveda in India. I mean, I believe that in many other places it also prevails. This is gifting of the authorship to them who actually have not contributed in research or writing. So sometimes we gift the authorship to the people in the form of obligation or in the form of mobilizing some people. For example, you mobilize the institutional head, or you mobilize the head of the department, or you mobilize somebody for some different reason who actually have not contributed anything to the research article, but you gift them the authorship. So this is also unethical. Okay. So this International Committee of Medical Journal Editor is an international body which has clearly defined that who should be listed as the author. So they have defined authorship criteria, which comprises of the 4 categories, four qualities actually. And every author who is listed there in the manuscript should fulfill these all four criteria. So first criteria is the substantial contribution to the conception or design of the work, or the acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of data for the work. Second qualification is that drafting of the work or revising, they should participate in drafting of the work or revising it critically. Thirdly, they should be the part of the final review, final approval of the version to be published. And finally, they should be accountable. Everybody whosoever is there in the author list, they agree to be accountable. If they are getting the fruits of this publication, they would be sharing it. And if they are being punished for the publication of something which is false, they should also be found accountable for. So they should be accountable for all aspects of the work in ensuring that questions related to the accuracy or integrity of any part of the work are appropriately investigated and resolved. So every author who is there in the list should fulfill these 4 criteria, which are being designed by the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. So this is the credit author statement. Just to comply with what we already have talked about, that these 4 criteria should be fulfilled by every author. If clarification is being given by the credit author statement, which identifies actually that what role has been played by a particular author. I mean, if you are listing 5 authors or 10 authors in your manuscript, every author should be identified that what their role was, what they have actually done with the manuscript. So this is a list of the kind of jobs which might have been done by the authors in the different form. It starts from the conceptualization to methods to software validation, formal analysis, investigation, resources, data curation, writing the original draft, writing review and editing, visualization, supervision, project administration, and funding acquisition. Anything can be shared by different authors. Then we need to talk about the author list, significance of the authorship order. This is also a very debated subject. People often quarrel about that, who is going to be the lead author, who is going to be the first author, who is going to be the last author, who is going to be the corresponding author or submitting author. So the advantage of being the first author or the lead author is this, that you would be given the 1/3 of the credit of whole manuscript. Similarly, the last author is also quite important. Usually the first author and last author are quite important, and both of them are going to share 1/3 of the credit for their contribution. And the rest, all authors in between are going to share the rest of the credit. I mean, rest 1/3 is to be shared by all authors which are placed in between. Who is corresponding author? Corresponding author is the one who takes the responsibility of communicating with the editor of the journal and takes the responsibility of responding to the reviewer's comment. And who is the submitting author? Submitting author can be anybody. It can be corresponding author. It can be anyone. Anyone among the author list can submit the manuscript to the journal. So one can play multiple roles also, and many can play a single role also. First author, corresponding author, and submitting author can all be single person. There can be two lead authors also. I mean, this is a very recent development. Initially, it was understood that first author can be one only, but now it is understood that there can be two lead authors which are actually sharing the equal contribution. And there can also be two corresponding authors. This is also something important. And those who do not fit into the authorship criteria as it was identified by International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, they should be given they should be named in the acknowledgement, and they should be duly acknowledged. Now, after learning this all, we need to choose the format of our writing. Whatever we have in our mind, we need to think of that in which format it is going to fit. So we need to find the writing format which fits into our idea and matches with the information which we want to share. So this is just a glimpse of available format. In different journal, it may be different. For example, it could be letter to editor, short communication, original clinical research, original experimental research, review article, hypothesis, case report, case series, opinion, thought leadership article, book review, perspective, lot many other kind of articles may be there. It varies actually as per the journal specification. And for the specific journal, you need to understand what are the actual author guidelines. So actual author guidelines should be very carefully followed, because every journal might be having their different specification. For example, if you try to write a letter to editor, some journal might be having a word limitation of 500 words, some might be having 800 words, and some might be having 1000 words. So you need to stick to the kind of specifications which are being given by a particular journal. So just think of that, what you are having in your mind and in which format it actually fits. So according to that format and according to the kind of journal where you are willing to submit it, you need to finalize your manuscript. So format of writing in general is that you need to begin with the title, abstract, keywords. Then you need to go for the introduction, material and method, results, discussion, and finally the references. So this IMRD format is usually applicable to the research articles where a specific material and method is being utilized. This is also applicable for the systematic reviews, for the meta-analysis, for the review articles which are following a specific pattern of utilization of the material and method, and where some specific results has been obtained. So basically, this is applicable to the research articles. Review articles may or may not require to be written in the IMRD style. These are some specific guidelines which are available at the Equator Network. So, depending upon which kind of research you have done, you need to follow these specific guidelines. For example, if you have done a kind of randomized controlled trial, you need to follow the CONCERT guideline. If it is a kind of observational study, you need to follow the STROBE guideline. If it is a systematic review guideline, protocol spirit guideline. Similarly, the case report, some care guideline is to be followed. So these are the specific guidelines which are going to guide us that for which kind of research, which kind of writing pattern should be adopted. So these guidelines are easily available at the Equator Network. Anybody can see it, and anybody can get benefit of these guidelines. So, okay, before we begin, you need to think of if you have the answer of these questions. First question is this, that why do you want to write it? What is the purpose of writing? So if the sole purpose of your writing is that you just want to have one research paper, two research paper, because it is mandatory to get a kind of qualification or to get a kind of PhD or MD degree in your particular discipline, this is useless. You need to understand that unless or until you have a kind of clear message coming out of your write-up, you should not write it. You also need to think of that how it is going to advance the existing knowledge. It should not be merely fulfilling your own needs, but it should add to the existing knowledge. It should add to the advancing of the existing knowledge. And finally, you need to think of that how this manuscript or how this research is going to help the society. The second important question which you need to understand and you need to have the answer is that where do you want this to get published? What are your target readers? Who is going to read it? What is their level? And what is the geographical area where this particular article is going to be read? Because as per your target reader, you need to refine your manuscript. If your target readers are belonging to some very specific discipline, you need to focus upon the need of those target readers. And similarly, you need to think of that what is the geographical area. If you are publishing something there in the Nepal itself, and your target readers are the Nepalis only, or the target readers are the people who belong to the Sovarikpa, you need to focus upon their own needs. There are specific needs which are belonging to that particular geographical area. But if you're thinking that your research should be published in some kind of international journal, which is also supposed to read by the people who are not from Nepal or who are not from the Sovarikpa, you need to think of that how they would be understanding your manuscript. So your standard of writing should be elevated to meet the standards which are required for the international readers also, which are not belonging to your particular area. Moreover, you need to think of that if you are comfortable with your English language skills, because this is something very, very important. Although, lot many softwares are available these days which can help you refining your manuscript on the perspective of the English. So this has not become been a kind of big problem these days. And moreover, this is also important to understand that have you searched and read the material already published in the similar area? Because whenever you are writing something, you need to understand that you need to see actually what has already been done in that particular area till date. If you are publishing a research in 2025, you need to understand, you need to see that what all has been done in this particular area till 24. So, you need to have a kind of very nice review, which is going to add to the credential and to the quality of your manuscript. So we are almost finished. We are almost done. Last minute check is that we need to go for the internal peer reviewing. Once you are done with your manuscript, the best thing is to show it to some of your colleagues. Some of your colleagues means your peers who are also working in the same kind of area. They can give you some of their responses, some of their comments. You need to respond to their responses or their comments by revising the text to the level of their satisfaction. If they are satisfied, you can think of that, yes, the people who are not from your peer group, if they are reading your manuscript, possibly they would also be happy or they would also be satisfying. And if it is being approved by them, this we call it internal peer review, and it helps the refining of the manuscript before it is actually being submitted to the journal. But next, we need to think of that we need to submit it to some appropriate journal. We need to wait for the responses which we are going to get from the journal. If we are lucky enough, and if our manuscript passes through the initial editorial check and it is being sent by the peer for the peer review, you might be receiving the reviewer's comments. Finally, you need to see very carefully what the reviewers are saying. You need to respond all these comments very carefully in a one-to-one manner, in a point-to-point manner. Be very, very careful in responding to the reviewers' comments, because you need to understand that these are the people who are having a kind of great expertise in that particular area where you just have begun to work actually. So every comment which is being raised by them should be honestly answered, should be carefully and should be honestly answered. And it should be responded in a point-to-point manner. This is quite important, and every journal used to say something like this, that whatever modifications you have made in your manuscript, it should be visible. It should be clearly visible, and every query which has been raised by the reviewer should be responded. Then you need to revise the article as per the suggestions which are being given by the reviewers. You need to resubmit it, and you need to finally wait for what happens finally. Now, you need to understand that this cycle of reviewing can take long time. It is not that you submitted an article, it was passed by the editorial screening, and you have received some comments from the reviewer and you submitted the revision, think of that it is going to get published. No, it may take as long as 7, 8, 9, even one of my article took 9 revisions. I eventually and ultimately faded up with the kind of revisions which were being taken up by the journal, and I finally gave a mail to the editor that what kind of process is being adopted for making the revisions or making the reviewers' comments. So then they humbly responded that it is a new journal and we are taking every care to publish the articles of very high quality. So just bear with us. We are just doing it just to ensure that the manuscript of very high quality are going to get published. So, it can take 9 or 10 revisions even. So you need to have patience to get it published. It is not something urgent. For you, it may be urgent. You might be in a hurry to publish your article, but the journal may not be in a hurry. So they would be taking their own time to decide that whether your article or your manuscript is able to get published or not, or if it still requires some kind of revisions. So you need to wait, and you need to do at every step very carefully as it is being recommended by the editor or by the reviewer. So finally, the conclusion of the take-home message is that scientific writing is a set of a skill which can be acquired. It is not something inborn. Somebody is not a born writer actually. It could be a kind of skill which can be acquired. So if you start thinking of this today, maybe after 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, you can be a very nice scientific writer, or you can be an accomplished writer. It is highly important for research to be documented in order to place them correctly before the words. So this is the importance of the documentation. And every time we say that unless or until a research is documented, it is no research, because it is not being shown to the world. So nobody knows that this research has been done. So you need to document it. And this is the importance of scientific writing. And a perseverance is needed to learn these skills. It is not something which can be learned in a one step and in a quick shot. You need to have a kind of perseverance to learn it really well. There can be initial failures also, so you need to get ready to face these failures. It is not sure that you are submitting an article and it is going to get published. So get ready to face the failures. But at the same time, you need to learn from the rejections. Whatever failures you might be facing initially, if you keep on learning from these rejection, believe believe that you would be improving your skills, and eventually and ultimately, finally, you would be turning up a kind of accomplished or established researcher, scientific researcher. So thank you very much. With this, I end, and I would be happy to reply to any question if anybody has. Thank you.
Yeah, it will be very good. We have some question, session.
Yes, answer these questions, please.
Yeah. Please, the participant can please put forward the question or writing or audio. You can do it. Certainly.
God bless you.
Yeah. Yeah. In the before I know other great question, I like to just make one comment.
Please.
Uh, yeah. For sorry, for since we were graduated from Dharamsala,
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
have no. Our decision was that we really regarding the journal writing and some research, these things were not very much kind of given preference. We
Yeah,
after graduation we are just going direct to clinic and just focusing just on the patient and not kind of scientific those kind of point which I think is very very important now. Though we
yes,
have a
yes.
lot of good experience in the patient dealing and also detection knowledge, but we as you have make very clear point that documentation, the scientific research, these are I think what the time demands. So
Yeah,
really we have to learn this from Ayurvedic, especially from the great scholar like Professor Rastogi. Recently, I came to know from from your mail that your journal has been really recorded in a very high standard, in this copy or something. Can you explain a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
about that? That will be very interesting for our participation.
Yes, yes, yes. It is recently indexed in the Scopus. I'm very happy to share it. That
Yeah,
this journal to the international standards actually.
yeah. Can you little bit explain detail about this one? Yeah, or what is that kind of the description? Will be very interesting for us.
Pardon?
Uh, would you kindly explain about this the October, which your journal was recognized in that in the
Yes, journal which is titled as Annals of Ayurvedic Medicine. It is getting published by Association of Ayurvedic Physicians of India. It is one
right.
Indian organization which belongs to the Ayurvedic physicians. And this journal has started its functioning or it's running since 2012. So now it is having 14 years of its continuous publishing. So
Oh,
the indexing of the journal is a very important criteria to see or to judge that what kind of articles or what is the quality of the publication or the content which is there. So the which belongs to Elsevier continuously explores the journal for their content and for their quality. And if they have made certain standards, they have their own standards, their own international standards. And if they found that the content and the quality of the publication of the journal is reaching to that certain standard, certain predefined standard, they endorse you. Actually, they endorse you in the form of indexing. And with this thing, your journal is elevated to a level that it is being considered by the most recruiting agencies. For example, in India, UGC or any other university, for the purpose of making a kind of judgment of the quality of the paper, they ask that your paper should be published in a Scopus Index journal. So if you have a publication in the Scopus Index journal, the possibility of getting rewarded by that publication are very, very high.